Want help to grow your business? Download BRiN, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit BRiN.ai or search the App Store today.
Thank you. I'm glad to be back. Appreciate that. Hopefully you had a nice day or a week wherever you are in your process between the segments. So we're now in segment number 5, and we'll be talking to you about how to diffuse objections when selling. And you're going to love this portion because I'll be talking to you about ways to diffuse objections, re-engage again. I'll be giving you trust-based languaging to make sure you're not caught in a corner again with somebody in terms of them putting pressure on you. And it'll really unstuck you if you find yourself attempting to try and push through pressure when it's coming in your direction. You see, most sales trainers teach you your job is to overcome objections. What we have discovered is if you have a method and a model for diffusing objections, you can preserve the relationship while making the sale versus risking it by trying to overcome it. So as we always begin these modules and segments, I want to start with how to be centered and to come back to our core mindset and a quick recap around what we do in our philosophy, because our philosophy behind Unlock the Game is to stay centered, connect with people, diffuse pressure, and get to the truth. So what I'll do for this time is I'm actually going to bring out Toby's book. If you remember Toby's book, my son's book, I wrote about him, mentioned him in our first segment, and I wrote a book about him called Lessons from Toby. And in that book is 52 lessons, 1 lesson per day over the year, to be able to center it in your personal business life. And I'm going to pull a quote from that right now and read it to you, because I think this quote actually frames this segment really well for us around how to manage pressure, how to diffuse it, how to re-engage it. Okay, so let me read it to you right now, right from the screen. And it's when you feel pressure, rather than try to confront it, diffuse it, and reconnect again to build that trust again. Because sometimes we find ourselves, we feel pressure, we attempt to overcome it. We put a sort of a fight reaction to it. We try and push forward. So you learn today that when you feel pressure, rather than confronting it, you diffuse it and re-engage again. With our process, I'll teach you in a few minutes, you'll have a very comfortable way of being confident in any moment when you're in a situation where you're selling or you feel like you have pressure coming your direction. All right? So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to walk you through 3 core steps, premises behind the way in which we teach people how to diffuse pressure. And there's 3 core elements behind it. And the first one is, number 1, as you heard before from me, is to always stay centered, like a rock. Don't move. When I say don't move, I mean psychologically be in a place where you can respond comfortably. Allow yourself to be able to re-engage without putting pressure on someone, without defending yourself. Because we have a tendency to defend ourselves if we feel like we're being pressured to respond right away. But the question is, how do you stay centered, right? Let me walk you through right now 3 or 4 key ways for how to stay centered the entire time during your day you're selling or running your business, okay? Number 1 is slow down your speech and your tone. Because the more you slow things down in a sales conversation, the more centered you become within yourself, the more relaxed you become, and the more you're able to listen to someone and come up with the language and words to respond in a way where they can actually hear you and respond back to you. If you feel pressure coming your direction from an objection, and you respond quickly, or you respond in a way that overcomes their objection, you'll find yourself caught up in the momentum having to defend yourself. So if you slow things down, if someone says to you, why should I go with you? And your answer is slow and centered and diffuses pressure, and I'll give you the answer to that in a few minutes, then you'll be able to re-engage them again without losing the moment or losing your centeredness and saving the relationship in the process, okay? That's number 1. Number 2 is not to make any assumptions as you're responding, right? Because we have a tendency sometimes when we have pressure coming our direction, we assume what the next step shall be. I mentioned that before, so you'll discover in a few minutes the words that I share with you is languaging designed to be pure in its form in terms of how it's received by the client or prospect, and to be able to be in a place where they listen to you, you listen to them, and you can now re-engage in a 2-way dialogue again, all right? The second way to stay centered is to stay humble. Be humble in the fact that maybe there isn't a next step, or maybe it's time to listen now. Maybe they have a hidden thought in their mind. Maybe they're not telling the truth yet. By being humble, You're able to pick that up with a different sense of yourself, and you can tell right away if what they're telling you is the truth or an objection to either get you off the phone or to end the conversation. Because we have a tendency sometimes to assume when we hear something, we know the meaning behind it. But if you stay humble and don't assume anything, you can respond with an answer that helps your potential client open up to you and tell you what they're really thinking. Because I'll give you an example in a few minutes, but you'll notice that many times objections contain hidden messages, and your job is to get to the truth behind each objection to re-engage again, to preserve the relationship and identify if you or them are a fit or not. All right? The next one is don't panic. Don't panic about losing the sale, because in many cases we do have a tendency, we sense we're under pressure, we have to respond, we get nervous. We're worried if we don't respond correctly with the right answer, we might lose the sale. But in reality, there is no sale yet until both of you build enough trust, make sure there's a fit, diffuse the objections, then if that goes well, there'll be a natural conclusion at the end to work together. So just stay centered, take a deep breath, and go back to our core principles, which is diffuse the pressure, get the truth, and be a problem solver. And of course, don't get defensive. Because if someone says to you, why should I go with you, or your price is too high, our tendency is to kind of respond in a fight or flight mode, which is respond and get it defensive, right? You want to say things like, we're the best, we're number one, we're better than everybody else. We defend ourselves. What happens is we get into kind of a tit for tat with a client, and we get a little bit aggressive, or they get more aggressive with us, and we lose that relationship with them over time. So the key is stay centered. Now, number 2 step of our process is to diffuse the pressure in the objection. When it's coming your direction, it's coming at you, and you feel like you don't have an answer yet, you'll be looking for an answer that might end up triggering more pressure on them. But instead, your goal is to diffuse it using phrases like, that's not a problem. And I'll share with you more about that in a minute, because see, they're expecting you to counter their objection, to try and overcome it. That's the game, you see. They're used to putting pressure on you, expecting you to try to overcome what they're about to tell you. And that's where the whole pressure fight begins. But instead, when someone says to you, gives you an objection, and you say, that's not a problem, you respond again with them. I'll tell you a few phrases in a few minutes. You give yourself enough space to be able to re-engage again in that moment. And I'll give you more context to that in a few minutes. But so number 1 is to stay centered. Number 2 is diffuse pressure using languaging like, that's not a problem, so they don't counter how they want you to counter. And the last one is to re-engage the conversation, to move it forward in a way that feels natural for both of you, to continue your mission of making sure it's a fit between you and them. And that's your core goal. Remember segment number 1? I walked through the mindset flow, and the mindset flow was a flow chart that laid out the process, the framework around this to build enough trust. Well, the first step of that process was to focus on the truth and not the sale. Second was to bring the walls of defensiveness down. Third was to re-engage again and to see if there's a fit or not. So with that framework here, applied to objections, same model, you'll be able to have a framework and a template for how to diffuse and respond to objections without having to overcome them to possibly lose the trust you've built over time. That's the 3 steps in our model. And now we'll talk about ways to apply that to real life objections. To have the audience actually send me ahead of time what are some common objections they actually get in their environment, sales and business. So I've got a few examples now. I'll walk through them, and I'll walk through some typical responses that people usually respond to these objections, and I'll give you our recommended phraseology. You can decide what's best, what you like to use for yourself, but you'll find the languaging itself will diffuse and re-engage and center you, just like the model covers before. All right, let's try number 1. The first one is, we're happy with who we're currently already using. We're happy with our current vendor. That's a pretty common one, I would assume, in your business, isn't it? Most people kind of get that quite a bit. We're happy with our current vendor, right? So when you hear that from somebody else, we're happy with someone we're already using, what's the usual response that you might say, right? You might say things like, well, in what way are you happy with them? Or can we show you a different way of doing this? Or we try and overcome the objection, right? We don't diffuse it. Let me kind of walk you through our process now on the screen of languaging that we've come up with, that we've tested over the years, that preserves the relationship, re-engages the dialogue without risking the relationship. Okay, let's try this scenario again. So someone says to you, we're happy with who we're currently using, or happy with our current vendor. your first response is always going to be, first of all, that's not a problem. Again, you say, that's not a problem. You lower your voice tone at the end. You let a chance to breathe. It gives you a chance to stay centered. It allows space in the dialogue, lets you think. So if someone says you were already using someone else or how about their current vendor, you say, that's not a problem. At this point, they're a bit confused, right? I expect you to start to overcome it, but that allows space to occur. Then from there, you can say, I wasn't calling to replace what you're currently using. I just wanted to see if you'd be open to a different perspective that you may not be aware of now, right? So what you're saying there is, the meaning here is, look, I'm not looking to replace your current vendor, relationship with your current vendor. I have no idea if you're a fit yet. I just wanted to see if you'd be open to a different perspective that you may not have access to now, right? So their fear is that you're going to try to overcome them and try to replace their current vendor. What you're saying is, we're not even there yet. Let's just first see if you're open to a different perspective from what you have right now, and go from there. Would you be open to that? And you'll find if you deliver this with a very natural way, and let's go role play right now. So if someone says to you, we're already using somebody else, how about their current vendor? The answer you're going to say is, that's not a problem. Lower your voice, lower your tone. Now they're kind of a bit confused because they're expecting you to start to respond and overcome it. Then from there, you would say, I wasn't looking to assume or replace who you're currently using. Just wanted to see if you'd be open to a different perspective, different thoughts around ways that you might have a different ways of viewing the challenge or problem in a different way. I'm just thinking of different ways off my current phraseology here. But you can see here, you're trying to send a message that my goal is not it's to replace your current provider. We aren't there yet. Let's just see if you're open to a different perspective on this challenge that you may not have access to now. And you'll find almost every time we deliver this in a very natural way, they're going to say to you, okay, what do you mean by that? Or can you share with me more about your perspective? Or what different ideas do you have? You see, that now opens up dialogue again. Doesn't risk the relationship. Because normally, you'd be shut down at that point, right? You have nowhere to go or trying to overcome yourself, hang up the phone. This keeps dialogue going. It bypasses the whole issue of them being challenged of you trying to take their vendor away from them. And it opens it with a dialogue with a different perspective, which is a different idea of how to better solve their problem. Okay? That's just one example of how to diffuse objections using our model of staying centered, diffusing pressure, and re-engaging the dialogue again. All right? Let's try another one. Let's try this one.
To continue enjoying this presentation, download BRiN, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit BRiN.ai or search the App Store today.